Love Defined, this isn't a course about information or knowledge. It is a course that's designed to teach you how to engage the love of God and how to give it away. You cannot give what you don't have or what you don't understand. So we need to come to understand, what does the love of God actually provide me? How have I encountered it? How does he love me in my weakness? How does he love me in my failure and in my sin? Because until you come to terms with how he loves you there, in that way, then how will you give it away to someone else in their weakness, in their failure, in their sin? Because we're commanded by Jesus to love as he has loved us. When do you have permission to not love? Whenever Jesus stops loving you. That's when you have permission to stop loving another. When God stops loving you in your weakness or failure or sin, then you have permission to stop loving someone else in theirs. But that's not what any of you have encountered. You sit here today because God continues to be faithful to you. Absolutely, utterly faithful to you. Never forsaking you, never neglecting or abandoning you, no matter what you've done to mistreat him, neglect him, or rebel. Does he discipline? Yes. But he does not stop loving. God has needed to come into my life because life was hell. I didn't understand life. Sexual abuse began at 5. At the same time, I also was aware I didn't want to be a boy, I wanted to be a girl. That created a different level of hell. And that didn't just disappear out of my life. And at 5 years old, I was at the altar, and I had my first encounter with God. Crying because of the torment in my life. And no pastor, no leader, no parent, no one came and put their arm around me. And initially, it seems like a bad thing. But God needed to actually hide me so that he could give me what I needed. And God met me in that place, and he showed me himself on a throne. My whole being was filled with joy and peace, something I did not know in this life. And he said what I needed to hear from him: I will make everything okay. And that began my journey as a child to trust that God's love was real and good. And life has been hell. It didn't get easier. But instead, what I discovered is that there is a God that doesn't forsake me. And when hell continues to beat upon life and upon our marriage or upon our family, that the love of God is our way through. It's our foundation that we stand on. And God guided me as a teenager simply by communicating to me what is true and asking me to meditate on that truth. And in doing so, he drew me out of my transgender confusion. It wasn't counseling, it wasn't therapy, it was God. Me in my brokenness crying out to God. The course is designed to help you understand very simply that the definition of love as given in 1 Corinthians 13 is actually what Paul declares it to be: a path, the most excellent way. And it is the way that we are to learn as sons and daughters, because it's the very nature of God. And so the course is broken into receive and give. So love is patient. So you'll discover, how is God being patient with you? What does it look like? What specific areas require God to be patient? So you have to look at yourself. You have to consider those weak, broken places of failure, and recognize that God's being patient with you. How is he doing that? What does it look like? What does he say to you? Because you're required to now give that away to others in their weakness, in their brokenness, and in their failure. The same pattern continues throughout the course. Receive God's kindness, give God's kindness. Receive God's bears all things, give God's bears all things. The first 3 steps of love actually teach you how to die. Patience, kindness, and bears all things is the journey to your own death, to your carnal nature. And without understanding that, then you aren't going to actually legitimately die. It's love that teaches us to die. But it doesn't keep us in death. It resurrects us out of death into new life. And that's what belief and hope and endurance are about. It's the invitation now to stand up in the greater fullness of God so that you have greater power to lay yourself down. You're not resurrected to new life so that you don't have to lay your life down again. You discover this rhythm so that you raise up in the love of God so that you have greater strength and capacity to now more fully lay yourself down so that you can do it again. It's so beautiful. As I was coming out of gender dysphoria at 14 years old, a woman from England prophesied over me, called me out of church. I was sitting on the back row with an afro, platform shoes, a disco shirt on. Those of you remember those days. And she said, "You come here." So I walked up to the front, scared to death. What 14-year-old in all kinds of life confusion wants to be called to the front of church? So I was just terrified. Sorry. This was not the woman from England. This was a man. And he said, "God's called you. And he's going to put a message inside you, and that message will be global." And at 14 years old, I look at that man in all of my confusion, and I thought, "You're a liar. You have no idea what you're talking about. God would never pick me for anything like that. You're out of your mind." At 18, God revisited that moment, and he said, "You rejected that word. I need you to say yes to it." I said, "God, I can't make that happen." He goes, "That's right, you're not going to make it happen. But you're going to agree with my word, and you're going to watch me make it happen." And I said, "Okay, God, if that's you, I say yes." My wife and I were married when I was 25, and shortly after that, a woman from England prophesied over us, and she said that God had called us not to pastoring, what we were doing in the moment, but actually to something that there was a message he was going to give us, and it would be global. And then another prophet from Singapore a year later prophesied the same thing. And I said, "Well, God, if that's you, fine. I can't make any of that happen. We're not even going to try." And so over the years, all we've done is invest our lives into broken people, pour love into them, and watch their lives be transformed. And invite them, "Now you go love others." And God began opening the nations. And today we're in dozens of countries. This course is in a number of languages. And actually it's in 9 languages at the moment. And on the 40th year of that promise from God, Dr. Barron reached out to me. And he said, "Somebody's introduced me to your course. I'd like to meet you." And we came, my wife and I, and we met him. And he said, "I would like to produce this. I feel like this is a message that God wants to go out." And so we agreed, and it was produced. And that happened on the 40th year of God's promise. My wife and I didn't try to make anything happen other than respond to God and love the people in front of us. I was listening to Robert, talk about Cuba. My daughter just married a Cuban last Sunday. And so through Bob, I just realized, I can go meet my mother-in-law. I didn't know I could do that. So if she's listening, I want to come see you someday. It's beautiful to see how God can go into any broken life. And through your willingness, that's all, your willingness, God can raise you up as a son or daughter to do whatever he desires through you. We don't desire to be great in the sense of needing fame or wealth. What we desire to do is to know what it is to be obedient and to see God be glorified through our obedience. What I love about ISOM is that it's raising up people to do that, to want to be obedient to God and to fulfill his purpose in their lives. And it's amazing to be able to have this opportunity to partner with you, Dr. Barron. Sue and I are very grateful.